everyone. My name is Arnold Weinfeld. I'm Associate Director at the Institute for Public Policy and Social Research at Michigan State University. And we're very pleased that you're here to join us this morning for our first legislative staff training session of the 2025-2026 legislative session. And very happy today to bring you presentations from both the Legislative Service Bureau and the House and Senate Fiscal Agencies. And without further ado, I'll introduce Jennifer Detloff, who's the Legislative Council Administrator and the LSB Director. And she and her team will be going over the services that the LSB provides. Again, for those joining, just joining, please put your name, office, and position in the chat to introduce yourselves. This session is being recorded and will be posted later this week on our website. Jennifer, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Arnold. I appreciate the time, everyone, this morning. Thanks for having us and hearing a little bit from LSB. I'll just give a quick introduction about our services. I'm sure you've heard the name before, and then hand it over to Tim Shields, who's the head of our legal division, and to Shanda Greco, who's the head of our research services division. So as you probably are aware, LSB is a nonpartisan, completely confidential service agency that is here to serve you. Any phone calls that you reach out to us or questions you have, we cannot share with anyone, including your leadership team. So please know that anything you need to discuss remains in the highest of confidence with us, and we're here to serve you. I always joke that it's literally our middle name. Under the LSB umbrella, we have the legal division that does all your research team obviously does research and some resolutions. Our print shop handles all of your constituent booklets, business March's reading month, books, all that good stuff that goes through your printing coordinators. And then lastly, the IT division that handles the MySource and the MyLeg website. And then separately under the council, which is a larger umbrella, is the Corrections Ombudsman and the Veterans Ombudsman. So if you have a corrections facility in your district, or maybe corrections officers that have questions or are interested in investigations, that team, Keith Barber and his team, can reach out and do those investigations for you and follow up with your office. And then the Veterans Ombudsman, similarly situated, there's a handful of veterans homes throughout the state that will do investigations and work with your staff in case there's questions in your district. So I will, without further ado, hand it over to Tim to dive into the legal aspect of things. If you remember nothing else from our call, please reach out if you have any questions. If you'd like to do a sit-down meeting with anyone on our team, we are happy to do so. I'll put my contact information in the chat and hand it over to Tim.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Shields. I am the division director for LSB Legal. As Jen stated, legal is part of LSB under the umbrella of the Legislative Council. We are provided for in both the state constitution and statute to provide certain services to the legislature. The specific role of legal division is to assist in creating bills for introduction, joint resolutions, and to create substitutions and amendments as the bills and joint resolutions move through the legislative process. You may be asking yourself, what is the difference between a bill and a joint resolution, and how does that affect how things are going to move through the process? On our end, it is rather similar, but the main difference is that a joint resolution is an amendment to the Constitution and will require 2/3 passage in both houses, as well as a vote of the people if that gets through both houses. Whereas a bill just is a normal bill that goes through the process, it would need a simple majority as it works its way through both houses. I'll talk a little bit more about creating substitutes and amendments as I walk through kind of the process of how a bill request becoming a law. But I wanted to focus first on kind of the services that the legal division is here to provide you. In addition to bill drafting, you may not know that the legal division is also responsible for compiling and maintaining the computer database of the Michigan compiled law. So all the MCL that you go and search for, once the bills are passed and are signed by the governor, they come back to us, and we go through our process of compiling those laws and making them available to the public. As well as we also review all forms of administrative rules. We work with JCAR to work through that process. Now, you may ask, how are we governed by what rules do we have to play by? And we have to operate through the Legislative Council drafting rules. These are rules that were enacted by the Legislative Council, and they dictate exactly how and when we can do what we do. So there are rules as to when we can accept bill requests, how many bill requests we can accept, the order that the bill requests that we receive must be drafted, as well as many other procedural aspects of legislative drafting. So if you come to us with a request and we say that, we have to put you in our queue in line, it's not because that we don't want to provide our service to you as quickly as possible. It's because we have these rules that we must abide by that were enacted by the Legislative Council, and that kind of keeps everything fair for everyone. So if we are referring to the council rules, that's what we're talking about. If you're interested, you can find those on my source under the legal tab. If you want to peruse those, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. They're not exactly the most entertaining reading, but they're important to us and how we govern, how we operate. You may ask what some of those rules are. So for instance, we just got through what we call our reintro period from November and December. Prior to a new session, every legislator gets 10 bill requests. Once we get into session starting in January, then every legislator gets 5 bill requests per month. Those are what's set out by the Legislative Council rules. Part of that is also talks about priorities. Each legislator gets 3 priorities over a 2-year session, not per year, over a 2-year session. Unless you're in leadership, then you get unlimited in terms of leadership, Senate Majority Leader, Speaker of the House, as well as some other appropriations adjacent. There are some appropriations leadership priorities that don't happen very often, but it is something that is available to use. So these are all established in the Legislative Council drafting rules and how we operate. If you have any questions on that, we are always willing to answer questions about why things are happening, and we'll hopefully be able to point out exactly why that's happening. Also part of the Legislative Council drafting rules, and Jen had touched on this, but we are a strictly nonpartisan agency. So what does that mean? It means we do not urge or oppose legislation in any way. We do not advise on policy. If you come to us with an idea, what we will do is we will help you make your idea become a bill. What we will not do is tell you what's the best way to do something. We will not say, hey, you will not be able to give us a couple of options and we say, hey, what would you think about how is the best way to do this? It's not what we do. You have policy office for that, and it helps keep things fair and make sure that there's no questions about how things are moving through the process. So then what do we do? So that's kind of what we don't do as nonpartisan. So what do we do? Well, we essentially are your drafting arm of the Legislative Service Bureau. So what happens is you come to us with an idea, and an idea can come in many different forms. I'm going to talk about those a little bit later as I walk through how bill request becomes a law. But you come to us with an idea, and we look at that idea and we tell you how it will go into the Michigan compiled law, whether you're going to need to amend the existing law, or we're going to create a new act, and whether or not you submitted enough bill requests to create those concepts and put them into action. And then we work with you to create bills that fit your intent. Again, as Jen talked about before, we have strict confidentiality with each office individually. So while we work for the legislature as a whole and are under the Legislative Council, really what we consider is our clients are each legislative office individually. So when we're working through these requests, we will alert our clients, the legislative offices, to potential legal issues, potential constitutional issues, possible practical issues of, bringing a idea into being. What we will not do is, tell you whether we think it's a good idea or a bad idea. What we won't do is walk you through, all the complicated issues that are around these constitutional issues. We more flag things and then advise you who may be the best person to talk to within your caucus about whatever issue we may think there could be potentially. And we try to do our best to walk you through what that would be. So again, going back to confidentiality, the bottom line to us is it's an attorney-client relationship. We can run into issues with that because oftentimes not every bill request is a single bill request. Often bill requests move together as packages. Often legislators want to work together on packages and on certain bill requests, or even on a single bill request, legislative offices want to work together. So just note that, we take confidentiality and as, the utmost importance in our work. So if we are asking you questions about, you may think it's obvious that you're willing to work with a certain office. But if we're asking you, or you're willing to work with leadership, or, you're willing to work with certain policy people, if we're asking you a question about whether it's okay if we work with these people or we discuss certain information and to what level, just note that it's because we're trying to do our best for you in terms of making sure that, everything is confidential that needs to stay confidential. So, just a basic overview. Once you submit a bill request, and you generally submit a bill request through MySource, if you need to submit a bill request, there are other ways to submit bill requests. We can submit bill requests for you. If you email us about a certain request, you're not sure exactly what to submit, we can help you work through what's needed. If you have a bigger idea that you think is going to take multiple bill requests, you can always reach out to our office and we will work with you in terms of how many bill requests you're going to need and what that's going to look like. And so then we can help submit those bill requests. But generally, bill requests are submitted through MySource, and then they go to our request system coordinator. So our request system coordinator is Sarah Bennett. A lot of you will get to know her very well, as she has many conversations with legislative offices about exactly what they need for their bill requests and how those bill requests become law. Once she has the information that she needs, she assigns that bill request to an attorney in our office. Our office is staffed, I think, with 23 attorneys now. And we separate our attorneys by practice area. So, it's not just, we don't go in any order or anything like that. Attorneys may have, more busy practice areas than others. But so we assign our bill request. Sarah will take a look at what she thinks the practice area that this would go into, and then those bill requests are assigned within our office. For instance, I still draft as the legal director. I have the areas of campaign finance, local government, vehicles, and fireworks, and property. So, and gaming. So if you see, if you have any bill requests related to any of those areas, it is quite possible you will be working with myself through this bill drafting process. So then once a request is assigned to the attorney will often reach out to the legislative office, either via email or phone, to start a conversation on exactly what the intent of the bill request is. Many bill requests, I would even say most bill requests, necessitate further communication with the legislative office before we can get the legislative office a draft. Generally, those communications will discuss legal issues or even just making sure that we understand what the intent of someone is asking. We will look through a request and have these conversations, and we can flag issues as we move through the process. A couple issues that come up most often are constitutional issues that our state, provides for, and they're a big part of how we draft. The first one is, the dual object clause. So I'm, throwing a lot of stuff at you. If you ever have questions about any of this, again, we are always happy to answer questions. We're happy to set up meetings with the office, but I'm just going to flag a couple of the constitutional issues that you're going to see most often as we're going through the process. So the first one, again, is dual object. No law shall embrace more than one object. No bill shall be altered or amended on its passage to change its original purpose. So, we'll talk about how we don't do omnibus bills. If you come to us with an idea and we'll say, you're going to need multiple bill requests, it's because of this right here. A bill can't have more than one object. We interpret that to mean that we cannot amend more than one act in a single bill request. And then as the bill's working through the process, we can't change the original purpose. There is a lot of nuance to that, and again, we will help work you through these things as they come up. But those are the big things. If we say you need multiple requests, it's because we think that what you're asking is really more than one object, and it's going to be editing or more than one act. And if we say, hey, we can't make this substitute that you're requesting, it's because you're changing the purpose of what was originally requested. Just note that that's because it's a constitutional issue, and again, we will explain this as we go through the process. And then the other one will say it's no law shall be revised, altered, or amended by reference to its title only. So this is amendment by reference issues. What this means is that if you come to us with a request and you want to have A, B, and C and Y is already covered in existing law, and we're creating a new act, we'll say, hey, we can put A, B, and C in here, but if you want to enact Y, we're going to have to go into that existing act or that other act, and we're going to have to make that change there because we can't make do an amendment by reference only. And that this is all in the state constitution. You're happy with whatever draft you say, hey, we want to finalize this, or hey, we're requesting a blue back. So what that signals to us is that you're ready to go, you're ready to introduce the legislation. I'll take a moment here to pause and talk about the structure within our office a little bit in terms of processing these documents and finalizing these documents. So not only do we have attorneys in our office, but we have what we call LSAs, legal service assistants. We have editors, we have proofers, we have Jeff, who many of you know or will get to know, who is he runs all the documents in our office, as well as running our printing within our office specifically. And then, I already talked about Sarah. So all of these people are key to the drafting process. When we're providing drafts, each draft that we provide will go through an editing process that, it sees an editor and it gets formatted by our LSAs. When we're ready to finalize, that draft will then be checked by another attorney in our office. So there are, we have lots of checks to make sure that we catch hopefully all, potential errors within documents. So if you say you want to finalize a document and we get you a document that has some small edits from what you thought the final product was going to be, oftentimes it's because we've had, another attorney in our office really look at the document closely, go through the document with the drafting attorney, and they've decided that there were some probably stylistic issues or some typos or some other thing that, necessitated a small change. Generally, if there's going to be a larger change, we'll reach out to the office before we finalize those documents based, depending on what the time crunch is. So when you finalize those documents, we will put them through processing. And what that means is we will print them within our office. You will get an electronic copy of PDF. It will have a QR code on it. And then you will get physical copies delivered to your office, one of them with a blue piece of paper on the back of it, hence blue back, that can be used to get co-sponsors for legislation, get signatures on it. Now, just because you have asked for a finalized copy, that does not mean that you cannot make changes prior to introduction. If you get a finalized copy and you realize, oh, wait, this isn't what we needed, or you have had further discussions, and if you got to change something minor to get some more votes, you can make changes. We call those star runs. So in order for us to deliver a star run to you, we need the physical copies of the blue back returned to our office. We can work on drafting star runs before that happens, but that is required by office. And that way we don't have multiple copies of bills out there floating around. So deliver us the blue back, the physical blue back, and we will deliver you a star run blue back. It can go through the same drafting process if need be. But so just know that that is an option. If you if you finalize something and you realize, wait, maybe it's not so final after all, reach out to the drafting attorney, and we are, always willing to help. So as it goes through the process, um, it gets what happens next. You introduce the bill, it gets a bill number. It generally gets assigned to committee. So in our office, we're not assigned to specific committees. Sorry, we're going through a bit of a cold here. We're not assigned to specific committees, but we stay with our bills. So if I draft a campaign finance bill, and it gets assigned to government ops instead of, elections or elections integrity, I will follow that bill and I will go, to government ops to attend that hearing if it gets a hearing there. If it goes to elections, I will follow it there. So as you're sitting in committees, as committees, pick up and continue on, we always have an attorney staffed at every committee that has a bill up for discussion. So if there's a appropriations committee that's just getting a presentation, or a committee that's just getting a presentation, we may not have an attorney there. But if there is legislation that's up for discussion or up for voting, we will always have an attorney there. If you need something, you can look for us. We will have our name tags. They'll have our name tags, and hopefully you will know who we are. We generally sit in the same spot in each committee room. So don't hesitate to come up, introduce yourselves, talk to us. We don't just have to be, names behind a keyboard. We are human beings, and we do like to have conversations sometimes. So feel free to approach us in committee, and we will do our best to introduce ourselves as well.
I think I'm going to jump in here. Tim, this is a good spot as you're talking about committees and some of the work that goes on behind the scenes in preparation for committee, to hand it over to Shanda and our research team to talk about how she can do some of that work on their end for your team. So we'll hand it over, and then we can circle back with questions, or again, we can do those in-person meetings in the office too.
Yes, I'd just like to say one last thing to reiterate, Jen. Sorry for running long. Please reach out to our office and set up a meeting. We will be happy to work with you and walk through this whole process and any questions that you may have.
All right. Thanks, Tim and Jen. I can talk fast, so if I start stumbling over my words or you don't understand me, like Tim said, call our office. We'd be happy to stop by. We in research are a team of 8 attorneys with specialized issue area portfolios. Very similar to legal division. We have our assignments, and we, over time, get really, really good at those. So we provide research and resolution drafting services. The first, research, it's in our name. So you can pretty much ask us anything. And this can range from constituent questions to, looking for different policy examples, or you may be looking for legal analysis on something. And we can help you with that. So for example, maybe your constituent has a question on their subdivision association restricting the type of fence that they can put into their yard. And they want to know the laws around the associations, how they're formed, can they even do this? So please, when you reach out to our office, provide as much information as possible. The more details that you provide, that might change the analysis of the situation. So in this example, it might not just be their condo association, it could be the local government. So if you have an email from your constituent that gives all of that information, send it to us, and that helps us to better understand kind of what you're looking for. So once we get that, we assign that to an attorney, and we kind of issue area spot. So we see, is this something where, it is a condo association issue, you just need the laws around that, how their bylaws are formed, or, is this something where they actually mention a permit? And in that case, okay, it might be a local government thing, and we will provide information on that as well. And we will, different resources that you might want to send them. And really the point of our work is to help you to respond to that constituent, but also to inform your boss on whether or not they want to actually do something about it. So if you find that, hey, you know what, this municipality in our district is being super strict about this, we don't like it, we want to put in a bill to preempt their ability to do that, you can do that. And now you have the information from us on, how to go forward. If you do decide that you want to change the law and you reach out to legal division to put it in that bill draft, but you've talked to us already, let legal division know that. The more information that they have when they're doing the bill drafting, the better. You can either send the memo or let them know that you've talked to us, and we will send them the memo and we will have a conversation as far as like, this is why, they've reached out to us. Here's the information that we provided so far. And that is really helpful to them. On the flip side of that, maybe you already have a bill draft in, and like Tim mentioned, your drafter flagged a few issues of like, this might be a constitutional problem, or, you need to flesh this out a little bit more. If you want to create penalties in the law, I need exactly what you want to put there. And you can reach out to us. We won't tell you what the best ones are, but we can help you find examples. So maybe that legislation has been introduced in Michigan in the past to do that. Or maybe other states have already been regulating this, and we can help you find those examples. Again, like Tim said, you don't necessarily want to fit another state's like square peg into Michigan law's round hole, but they will help you fit those together and kind of pull the policy from those other states to see how that can work here. If you are already working with legal, again, let us know that you have that bill draft in, and we will work with the drafter to make sure that we both have like the most complete picture of where you are in the process and that we know what you need to move forward. If you do have a time-sensitive request, please let us know. Currently, all of our, like short deadline requests need to go through me, and, we're pretty swamped with the beginning of the session. But if you really need something, call us. We will, if it's a short deadline and we might not be able to meet what you're looking for, we can really try to understand your goals to either scope it of say, okay, you know what, all I really need is an answer to this question. Okay, I can get an attorney to do that for you, and we can do that quickly. Or if it's actually, something much bigger, we can adjust the timeline to, and get you maybe what you need immediately sooner, and then put the rest in for a longer timeline request. So a good example of this is like sometimes we will have offices call looking for 50 state research in a week. That's not really something that we can turn around unless it's already been done. So NCSL is a good resource that we will rely on for that sometimes, because they do a lot of that. And we can maybe send you that resource and maybe that's it. But communicate to us of, if it doesn't already exist, I don't need it. Or if it already exists, send it along. And if not, don't worry. But we could also call back, and have that conversation about, if you're looking for ideas or you're looking for, perhaps persuasive data for caucus or for committee, call us and let us know that that's what you are using it for. And maybe we can look at, okay, well, let's start looking and see what the Great Lakes states have done. And we'll have that conversation with you of like, okay, well, maybe we look at, these other states and we say 3 out of 5 Great Lakes states have done this. And at least you have something to go with. And again, if you're looking for that more, big picture, we can get you that at a later time. So similar to legal division, we can't give you policy or legal advice. We can tell you what the state of the law is. We can tell you what your policy, options might be based on what other states have done, but we're not going to tell you what the best one is. Yep. Thank you, Arnold. You're also another great resource that we rely on sometimes. So the other primary service that we provide is resolution drafting. So there's 2 main types that we do. Legal division does joint resolutions. They're treated the same as bill requests, but we will do concurrent and plain resolutions. Concurrent resolutions have to be passed by both chambers before they are effective. And then within those 2 types of resolutions, there are business and policy. That's what we draft. We will not draft commemorative. So business resolutions, typically it's an action that's required by the Constitution or to conduct internal business of the legislature, where the resolution is the only applicable way to do that. Or sorry, it's the only way to do it. And it's only applicable for the 2-year session in which it's passed. The other type of resolution that we'll do is a policy resolution. And these are typically topics where the legislature doesn't have the legal authority to take action on that issue directly. And these are most often federal issues. So an example of that, and this one's a silly one, but perhaps you want to urge Congress to adopt a law that would require the federal treasury to issue a coupon for cotton candy with every accepted federal income tax filing. So the 2 services that we'll provide if you come in with that request is a legal analysis and fact checking. So does Treasury even have the legal authority to like issue this coupon? Like, can Congress require Treasury to do that? We will look at whether it's even an appropriate topic for that resolution to urge Congress to do that. And then the other thing that we will ask you to do is, because we do not take policy positions, we don't give you those policy positions, we ask you to give them to us. So why do you even want to do this? Like, and that might be, you put in that box when you're submitting your resolution request that people really like cotton candy and paying your taxes is awful. And so we want to be able to make people feel a little bit better about them. It could be that simple. And maybe someone did a white paper on it. And so you submit the you attach the white paper to your request. And that's super helpful if you have that kind of thing. If the white paper, for example, has 20 different arguments about why this is a great policy to put in place, chances are we'll come back to you and say, okay, this has a lot of information. What do you want to do? And the reason for that is ultimately this resolution should be the voice of your legislator. And so we want to make sure that we're capturing their opinions, their voice, and we will work with you to do that. Maybe you have this idea and you have no idea if the facts support that. In that case, you can reach out to us and do a research request and, say, hey, we really think this would be a great idea. Would the people support this? Has anyone done a cost analysis? Can we get more information before we decide we want to go forward? And we're happy to help you with that as well. So one thing to mention is we don't have the same time, like limitations on our requests and our priorities that legal does. And so we work really closely with our clients to understand their goals and to make sure that we're doing our best so that everyone has fair and equal access to our services. So given those limitations, we really want to make sure that your office is as strong as it can be, that we really understand your goals, and that you're kind of only relying on us for the hard stuff. And so to that point, we really want to teach you how to fish. So this training is perfect if there are, the website just changed over. Say you haven't gotten acquainted with the new legislative website yet on how to search bills or laws. Give us a call and we're happy to stop by your office and walk through a tutorial and just teach you some tips and tricks that we use to find, again, past legislation or identify different areas of the law that might be applicable to your situation. Happy to do that with you. My source would be our other website that, it has a lot of information on there. It is the portal for getting all of LSB services. And so if you don't know where to find things on there, or you're not sure how to view your boss's request, call us. And it might be something we can do over the phone. But again, we're happy to stop by your office and help you with that as well. So yeah, with that, I think that's it. I think we still have a couple minutes for questions.
We do, and thank you very much, Chandra and Tim and Jennifer. Lots of information there, and LSB is always a great resource for your offices, and always open, as they said, to meeting, taking a call, if you have any questions. But if we have any questions right now, be more than happy to unmute someone if you want to raise your hand. Or put your question in the chat. Okay, you all did obviously a fantastic job this morning, and I'm sure many of the folks online here are already somewhat familiar, if not very familiar with your services, but it's always great to have a refresher. And so, as I said, I want to thank Tim and Chandra and Jennifer for being here this morning. And again, please, as a former staff person myself, I can't tell you how valuable the legal drafters and the research folks that LSB has were to me and my work as I move forward. So please don't hesitate to make use of their services. And still not seeing anything. So I want to thank the three of you. And we'll move on now to the fiscal and budget portion of our session today. Thanks again. You guys can hang around, or I know you're very busy as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce both Kathryn Summers, who is the director for the Senate Fiscal Agency, and Robin Risko, an associate director with the House Fiscal Agency, who are here today to talk about the roles of each agency and then get into a bit of the budget and revenues. So, Robin, I understand you're leading it off. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Hi, Arnold.
Super.
How are you
Good
today?
morning. Thanks for being here.
Good. Trying to find my PowerPoint here. Are you seeing that?
Not yet. No. Let's see. Make sure you can share. Well, you should be able to share.
It's not working. Let's see. Let's try this again. Sorry about this. I'm not sure what's happening. Share. Now are you seeing it?
Now it's popping up. Yep.
Okay.
You just want to hit the slide presentation piece and it'll be full screen. There we go. Yep.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Having a few issues, but my name is Robin, as Arnold said, and I am an associate director here at the Fiscal Agency. I'm responsible for the Department of Corrections budget as well as the judicial budget. I'm also the coordinator for all supplemental appropriations bills, and I work on the legislative transfer requests. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the House and Senate fiscal agencies and tell you a little bit about what we do and who we are. The House and Senate fiscal agencies serve both the Democrats and Republicans. Both agencies were established in law. I'm trying to my notes here. Whoops, I'm sorry. It's more commonly it was titled the Legislative Counsel Act. Let me get rid of this view. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I got that now. Both agencies were established in law, as I said, Public Act 268 of 1986. More commonly, it was called the Legislative Counsel Act. The Senate Fiscal Agency was created in Section 4.1501, and the House Fiscal Agency was created in Section 4.1601. The agencies are governed by separate governing boards. The governing board for the House Fiscal Agency has 6 members, and the governing board for the Senate Fiscal Agency has 5 members. Governing boards are required to meet quarterly, and they're responsible for overseeing operations of their respective fiscal agencies. The law that established the agency specifies that an employee of either fiscal agency is not to reveal to any person outside of the agency the contents or nature of any bill, substitute, amendment, resolution, special report, or proposal that has not yet been published by the legislature, unless the employee has the consent of the legislature who sponsors the bill, the substitute, the amendment, resolution, special report, or proposal. All staff provide confidential and nonpartisan expertise to all members of the legislature. Our conversations are private, and we hold that in high regard because our work depends on trust with the individual members. They want to have private conversations, open conversations about policy issues with us, and they trust that we won't share any of this information with other people. We work with both parties. However, I will note that in practice, we generally do more work for the majority party because they are the party that is driving policy. We also provide orientation and training for members of the legislature and their staff. And we train on the state budget as well as other finance matters. We prepare legislative summaries and fiscal impact statements for every bill that is scheduled for a committee hearing. Both fiscal agencies have staffs of a little over 20 people. Besides the director and deputy director, positions include fiscal analysts, economists, legislative analysts, and support staff. I'll talk a little bit about these positions. Fiscal analysts are the point people on budget development and budget analysis. Listed here on slide 6 are some of the various things that fiscal analysts do. Each analyst has 1 or 2 budget areas that they are responsible for, and they work directly with appropriation subcommittee chairs, other members, and policy staff to develop and draft the budget for those areas. Fiscal analysts review the governor's budget recommendation and assist legislators in developing budget alternatives. They review and prepare budget bills, supplemental appropriation bills, and certain transfer requests. We provide fiscal impact statements on legislative proposals. We monitor state and national situations that may have budgetary implications. We do research and we analyze fiscal issues. We prepare reports and documents to assist legislative deliberations, and we prepare special reports at the request of members of the legislature. Economists deal mainly with economic forecasting, revenue forecasting and estimating, and tax analysis. Economists monitor not only state revenues, but they track national economic conditions as well as prepare subsequent reports on such issues. Legislative analysts prepare concise summaries in layman's terms of all bills that go before committees for hearings. These summaries include fiscal impact statements, which are developed by fiscal analysts or economists, depending on the subject nature. Summaries include a description of the problem being addressed, arguments for and against the bill, and positions of stakeholders as well as organizations that would be directly affected by provisions of the bill. The summaries and fiscal statements are updated through each step of the process as bills make their way through the House and Senate chambers. Support staff assist the directors and all other staff at the agencies. They compose and distribute publications and reports and basically manage day-to-day operations of the agencies. Moving on to a more specific description of what we do. The statute that created the agency also includes a list of responsibilities that are required of agency staff. The law requires that we prepare fiscal analyses for all bills scheduled for hearings before committees. The law also requires that the analyses include a summary that explains the changes the bill would make to existing law, an estimate of the potential impact or amount by which revenues and expenditures would increase or decrease government revenues and expenditures, and which funds the bill would affect. If federal funding received by the state would be affected by the bill, then the analysis must include an estimate of that effect. And if the bill would increase or decrease state taxes or fees, the analysis may include an estimate of the impact on payers of those taxes or fees. So we analyze the state budget as recommended by the governor and any alternative proposals that are submitted by state departments. We prepare appropriation bills, substitute appropriation bills, and amendments for appropriation committee members and other members. We analyze policy alternatives at the request of members. We monitor expenditures to determine compliance with legislative intent. We provide specific budget details impacting members' districts, for example, school foundation allowances, revenue sharing payments, and road funding, to name a few. We complete other assignments as requested, including assisting constituents with budget-related questions. Slide 10 here shows you what House and Senate Fiscal Agency legislative analyses documents look like. We provide these summary documents for bills that are before policy committees or if members request them. As I mentioned earlier, we update the summary documents throughout the process, including in-depth analyses of and including in fiscal impact statements to the extent that we are able to. Slide 11 shows you an example of a document you might see from one of our economists. Again, Staff economists forecast economic factors and state revenues. They analyze tax proposals, and they do research related to tax-related issues. The fiscal agencies publish a variety of documents. Slides 12 and 13 here list a sampling of the kinds of documents we publish. All documents are made available on our websites and are archived for research purposes. Legislative summaries and analysis, including fiscal analyses, are located on the Michigan Legislature website as well as on our own websites. You will see them on the same web page where you find the actual bill. So if you go to the Michigan Legislature page and look up a bill, it will show you bill versions, the bill as introduced, the bill as passed by each of the chambers, and the bill as enrolled. You will also see summaries of the bill as it makes its way through the process. If the bill has not been taken up by a committee, you will only see the text of the bill as introduced, but there will not be any summary documents by our agencies. Budget summaries are provided for each department for each stage of the budget process, the executive proposal, the Senate and House passed versions, and for final passage or enacted. Kathryn will talk a little bit more about these steps of the process in a few minutes. Budget area PowerPoint briefings are a good starting point for anyone looking to learn basics about budget areas. These briefings give you a high-level overview of the contents of each budget area. Line item summaries and program descriptions. Again, the line item summary documents contain, each of the line items as they're listed in budget bills, give you a brief description of the kinds of things that are funded out of those line items. And then below it it's like funding source details, what kind of funding sources apply to each of the line items. Budget tables provide you databases for things like historic lottery revenues, prisoner populations, Medicaid caseloads, just to name a few. Each agency provides reports on revenues. Revenue summaries are published after each consensus revenue estimating conference, and updates of actual revenue collections are provided monthly. Other reports and issue papers cover a range of topics of importance to legislature and to the public at large. They consist of everything from how the unemployment insurance system works to the basics of Medicaid to prison demographics in Michigan, along with bill analyses. We do analyses of statewide ballot proposals, and you can find those on our websites as well. The website address for the House Fiscal Agency is www.house.mi.gov/HFA. The website address for the Senate Fiscal Agency is sfa.senate.michigan.gov. And you would go to the legislature.mi.gov for the Michigan legislature page that I mentioned earlier when talking about where you will find bills and summaries of the bills as they move through the process. Slides 15 and 16 give you an example of, or actually show you snapshots of each of the fiscal agency's home pages. On the House Fiscal Agency page, you will see a blue ribbon run across the top. Each of those categories has a drop-down menu covering various areas of interest, and specific budget areas are listed off to the right side in gray. All House fiscal publications can be found on this site. And on the Senate Fiscal Agency page, they too have a ribbon that runs across the top of the page with drop-down menus covering various areas of interest, and they list their specific budget areas off to the left side. These last few slides give you a high-level example of the kinds of questions we can help you with, whether they come from legislators, staff, stakeholders, or the general public. We get a lot of the same requests year after year, but we also get a lot of new requests, especially as the issues that are seen as most pressing change over time. Frequently asked questions include, what is the current size of the state budget? Where can I get an estimated fiscal impact of proposed legislation? What would be the revenue impact of changing the income tax by 0.1% or the sales tax by 1 cent? How much in foundation allowance does a member school district get? Where can I learn more about the state school retirement systems? Where can I find out more about federal funding available for broadband expansion? How are transportation fund revenues distributed? Where can I find a 20-year history of Medicaid spending? Where can I find out the size of a prison population? How much does it cost to house a prisoner? Those are just examples of questions that we get on a regular basis, and those are the kinds of things that we can help you with. You can always feel free, to the extent that we can, we talk fiscal primarily. We're not really supposed to get involved in the policy. That's what the policy staffs are for. But we will help you. And if we can't help you with something, we will direct you to who you can go to for better information. That concludes my overview of the House and Senate fiscal agencies, who we are and what we do. I'll turn it over to Kathryn now for her presentation on the budget process. And I think once she's finished, we can answer questions about each of our areas. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Just going to pull up mine. Computer wants to restart, so hopefully it doesn't just do that.
Yeah.
All right. Is it showing up well?
It is. Try from beginning again.
From beginning. It's on beginning.
No, we can still see the slides on the left too. So.
Oh, I see. 1 second. I had it on my actual thing over here. It's always fun. When you have 3 monitors, you never know exactly which one it's gonna, bring up. I mean, even though it shows the one that I wanted.
That was exactly my issue.
Let's see.
Okay.
Are you seeing anything right now or no? Yes, you are. Let's stop that for a sec. From beginning. And problem is that as soon as you do this, then I lose that. All right, working on it. You'd think we hadn't done this before. Okay, let me try this one.
There
Yes,
we go.
no?
There you go.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so good morning. Thanks for your patience. I'm Kathryn Summers. I'm the Director of Senate Fiscal. Robin gave a great overview of all of the things we do and provide. And I think somebody I think maybe Tim on LSB said, you may not remember all the pieces, but please just know that we're here. So, that's the most important thing. For those of you who are already on budget or have done budgets, I apologize. Probably some of these slides will look duplicative of things you've seen because we are into the budget process. So I'm going to go through and just talk about budget timeline steps and give you some numbers of the budget today and the governor's recommendation, which just came out. So let me see if I can get to the screen to click through. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to start with the timeline. And every year is different. I'll start with that. So this time frame and the next slide show you what is generally the case. It doesn't mean that it's always the case. And so I just want to always say that I think that one thing that's interesting, as you probably all know, working in the legislature, is that you can never know what your next day is going to look like, or your next month, or those kinds of things. So this is the general time frame, and I'll go through that. So we're in February now, but if you back up a little bit to to January, Robin briefly mentioned that there are revenue estimating conferences. So you can see that in January, generally the state of the state happens in January. That's clearly not the case this year. So here's a good prime example, because the state of the state will be in February. It's tomorrow. It's Wednesday, I think. But anyway, so what we have, our role in January is the revenue estimating conference. That revenue conference is made up of the Senate Fiscal Agency, the House Fiscal Agency, and the Department of Treasury. And the estimates that are determined there on revenues are what the governor uses for the final budget presentation that comes out in February. So February 5th this year, just almost 3 weeks ago now, the governor's budget was released. It is a proposal. Many of you are probably familiar with the governor proposes and the legislature disposes. So it is a proposal. Now the Senate and House begin, tearing that apart, seeing what's being proposed, and then creating, counter proposals. So that's where we are. Right now, both of the fiscal agencies break apart what the governor's recommendation looks like. We present that to the appropriations committees and then the subcommittees that are assigned to all the different areas. Again, you saw those listed on both of our home pages. The Ag Department, Corrections, legislature and higher education and health and human services. All of those departments are all different subcommittees. They all get involved in looking at the different, details of the budget proposals. So that happens February, March, April-ish, and then typically, a subcommittee recommendation often comes out in April. Then about the subcommittee does a recommendation. It goes to the full appropriations committee. That can happen in either April or May. And then the full appropriations committee hears all the subcommittee, proposals, maybe entertains amendments, does substitutes, sends them on to the Senate and House floors. Then the full chambers review the budgets that came out of the appropriations committees, pass them, send them over to the opposite chamber, and then at some point after that, negotiations have to start occurring to reconcile between what the administration wants in the budget, what the Senate wants in the budget, and what the House wants in the budget. Often, that's occurring in May and June. There is statute that requires the budget to be done by July 1st. However, there's no penalty in that statute if the budget isn't done by July 1st. And also, if it isn't, the legislature could always amend that to say, except for this year, the budget is done by July 1. So the state's fiscal year runs from October 1st through September 30th. So the money sort of has to be done, and completely resolved by October 1st. I think, although I'm not a legislator and didn't vote on the legislation, but a lot of local units of government, their fiscal year, so your schools and your cities, villages, and townships, your universities and community colleges, a lot or most or all of their fiscal years start July 1. So I think that the statute that says the budget should be done by July 1 probably was an attempt to try to align a little bit there. But like I said, it is the state's fiscal year starts October 1. So anyway, you can see the rest of the year here. Like I said, this is just a general time frame. The next slide sort of goes through the same thing, just in a different format. The revenue conference, I forgot to mention that complicating the resolution of the budget, you have January revenues that are determined. You have the governor's proposal. You have the Senate and the House working on their proposals. So now you have a set of revenues, a set of spending, different priorities. Then come May, we do a second revenue estimating conference. And at that conference, it could be that revenues go up or down compared to what everybody had been working from starting in February. So you can imagine probably how difficult it can be sometimes to resolve differences in the budget just between the proposals, and then let alone you add another layer of complication when we have the May conference that may change revenues, either adding money, reducing estimates, those kinds of things. But eventually, there are targets that are provided to the conference committees, and they have to hash things out, and then a budget is determined at some point in the summer. So that kind of describes the budget process, the typical budget process. You're probably familiar with the word supplemental. A supplemental is exactly what it sounds like. You have an initial budget that's enacted, in June, July, August, September, somewhere in there. And then that's what we call the initial appropriations. Makes sense? Initial, the first set of appropriations. But sometimes there might be needs or desires or required things like balancing the books. We need to do a book closing supplemental here by the end of March. These are things that adjust funding, for the year. So it could be that, in this case, a book closing supplemental takes a look back at last year's budget that closed September 30th, and there are some technical adjustments that still need to occur with a book closing supplemental. So a supplemental can either add money or reduce money, reduce spending. If you're spending more money, then that's going to reduce your money on the balance sheet, which all makes sense. So just to give you a couple pieces of information, if you're not already on appropriations or if you're new to the legislative process, Robin mentioned we get asked, I think her first question on her slide was, what is the size of the state budget? In the current year, it's about $81 billion. This is from all sources of funding. So that's not that does include federal funds and state funds, and a little sliver of local and private funds. State funds, and I will have more charts here in a couple minutes, but state funds include not just things that you may hear about a lot, like the general fund, which gets money from the income tax and the sales tax, or the school aid fund, which gets a lot of money from the sales tax. But you also have lots of fees. So, when you pay your driver's license fee, or you go hunting or fishing and pay a fee, those kinds of things. Those dollars are what's called state restricted funds. They generally are coming in and spent for a specific purpose that's usually prescribed in statute. So this chart shows you, out of that $81 billion, where does the money go by budget area? Again, if this chart isn't to your liking, believe me, we can make any chart. We probably already have. Any way to slice and dice, the budget, just reach out. If you're not seeing it, reach out to us and we can, believe me, we can get it for you. Health and Human Services takes up just under 50% of the state budget. Again, this reflects the inclusion of federal funds, which is important in a minute when we look at some other slides. Education takes up about 30% of the state budget, and you can see the different pieces. So this shows you, out of the $81 billion, how much of it does come from the federal government? It's about 42%. How much of it is from state restricted funds? It's almost 40%. Now that state restricted, that sort of, forest green color, that 39.3%, that includes things like driver's license fees and, nursing certification fees and hunting and fishing fees. But it also includes the restricted school aid fund, which is why this is such a big piece of the budget, or makes up such a big proportion. And then the general fund, which is sort of like the state's checking account, makes up about 18%. Okay, If you pull federal funds out of the picture, set them aside because they're often prescriptive, and restricted for certain programs. The federal government sends money and it's for, it's not generally just for anything the state wants to use. If you pull that out of the picture, the picture changes a little bit. So if you'll recall, when we look at all funds, the Health and Human Services budget takes up almost half of the budget. When you pull federal funds out, now you're seeing that education is the big winner of state spending. It's about 46% of the budget. Now, when you pull out the school aid fund and other state restricted funds, like those license fees, and you look just at the state's general fund, that picture flips almost exactly back again, where Health and Human Services gets about 45% of the state's general fund. So it's just under 15 billion, so about half of that goes to the Health and Human Services budget. Robin mentioned this too. Like how much does 1 cent increase in the sales tax or 0.1% increase in the income tax or increase or decrease? What is the incremental change if you were to change tax rates? Both agencies put these kinds of charts together, so it's something that we have on hand, no problem. But this is just happens to be our chart. So we do keep those handy if you're curious about, increasing or decreasing tax rates, what the impact would look like. I don't know what happened to the little things here, but I think actually Robin had the exact same chart in her presentation. So, this is the general fund, where it comes from. About 60% of it comes from the income tax, about 11% comes from sales tax, and all those other things. I don't know why I lost all the little data labels. Anyway, the school aid fund is about $18 billion. And as you can see, a lot of that comes from the sales tax. So the sales tax, it's about 73% of the 6 cents that we pay on sales tax goes into the school aid fund. So a big question that, still may linger. It certainly was around. I've been doing, Robin and I have both been around a while. So one question that we get still semi-frequently is, does the lottery money go to schools? Yes, it does. 100% of lottery revenues go into the school aid fund after you deduct out paying prizes and the administrative costs. So I'm just going to give a couple of highlights of the governor's budget recommendation, just because we're in budget season, and you may be hearing about these right now. So I wanted to give just a couple pieces. We have done, and I only put ours up here, a couple of publications, but I know House Fiscal does as well. So on both of our home pages, you can find, complete analyses of the governor's recommendation. Depending on how much detail you want to get into, it's all there. There's one tax proposal in the governor's recommendation. It is on vaping products. If it were to be implemented, then on a full year basis, it would raise about $57 million. You can see where the governor is proposing to spend that money in those inset bullets. I will point out that if this doesn't occur, if this vaping tax were not to occur, there would be in the governor's budget a hole of about $21 million in the DHHS budget. Now, again, it's a proposal, so clearly, but they're proposing to use $21 million of it to help support Medicaid costs in the DHHS budget, as well as some other new programs that are listed there. But these are the kinds of services or flags that we give to the legislature so that they know it's not just that there's a vaping proposal, but how does that impact the budget if it does or doesn't get adopted? So that's the kind of, service that we're trying to add here. Another thing that I think has been discussed is how the budget has grown over the last several years. In 2017, the budget was about $54.5 billion. So that's sort of this dark blue line, and everything on the right hand side that shows you the governor's recommended budget level, which would be 83.5 billion. You'll recall I said a few slides back that today we're at 81.2 billion, I think, of adjusted gross. This proposal would be 83.5. You can see the different colors on the right showing where the growth in the budget has been since that time. Federal funds, it's almost exactly split between federal funds and state restricted funds. Again, a lot of that being growth in the school aid fund, a lot of that being growth in the sales tax. So lots of things. The director of House Fiscal, Mary Ann Cleary, and I just did a presentation on Saturday, and we both noted that I think somebody asked us what takeaways, what have we learned sort of from COVID? Because as you know, during COVID, there was a lot of federal money that was provided to states. So I think I have a chart in this one. If I don't, it's in one of my other presentations. But the federal funds, really went up. There's like a COVID bump of federal funding. However, what I think, so I think what we have struggled with when we do revenue estimates is, are we going to return to pre-COVID revenue numbers? And that hasn't happened in terms of revenues coming into the state. What we think we've seen is that the trend lines are just higher. So anyway, it was sort of an interesting observation, I think, that we, to note that I think we had been waiting for example, sales tax revenue to fall back to pre-COVID levels, and instead it's just at an elevated level, and like that's the new baseline. Kind of a segue there. Sorry, sidebar. That was the word I was looking for. If you want one slide, at least in my how I view the governor's budget proposal, I boiled it down to one slide, and it's this. There's some spending that's necessary in the in the current year in a supplemental, and it's all technical costs on DHHS. Or almost all, if not all, it's almost all. Part of it is repaying the federal government. So this number, $380 million that I'm talking about. It's almost all DHHS, and it's all like to pay for Medicaid reimbursement rates and nursing home rates and those kinds of things to make them what's called actuarially sound. Anyway, it's technical cost, but that's a big piece. And then there's a recommendation to add $50 million into the BSF and $40 million into the UIA reserve. Then if you go down to sort of the bottom box on the left side, there is a current CSB for us in fiscal world means current services baselines. Basically, that says if you take this year's budget and you just don't do any program changes, you don't grow programs, you don't decrease programs, you don't do anything. You just take today's services and you cost them out for next year. What does that look like? And in this case, $600 million of general fund is the estimate for increases in just baseline costs. Almost all of that is in the DHHS budget. So that's eating up a huge chunk of ongoing general fund revenue, meaning that there's less money available for other things. $120 million for economics, like rent and employee salaries and insurance costs and those kinds of things. Those are called economics. There's about $650 million in proposed one-time spending. And then that leaves about $300 million for investments. The governor's proposal has this $300 million, and you can identify half of that in just three items: a $50 million deposit into the higher ed scholarship program, $70 million for a operations increase for universities, and then a proposal in DHHS of $33 million GF costs for vulnerable adults. Anyway, so there's that adds up to just about 150 million, just about half of those new programs. So, or investments. On the school aid side, I'm sure you've seen, because every legislator has schools in their district, there's a proposal to increase the foundation allowance up to $10,000 per pupil. That would cost 516 million. There's some best practices money proposed, and some other things in school aid. So I know I'm getting closer on time, so I'm just going to go a little faster. Largest one-time spending request, so there's about 650 million GF. And a big piece of that is a federal match to draw down all the federal funds in the roads, but in MDOT, be 112 million. Another 80 million to keep paying off this disallowance from the federal government on psychiatric hospital costs, and 50 million for Eagle lead line replacement, and you can see a couple other things here. There are a number of fees being proposed for increase, so you will, your legislative office may hear about these fee increases being proposed. The biggest one is the tipping fee in Eagle. If it were to be adopted, it would raise $80 million in its proposed form. Anyway, then there are some other ones. I think other things that you will see in terms of implementing the budget. I talked about the vaping tax. There's another thing that is sort of assumed in the budget that would require statutory change. And that is $17.5 million annually is paid out of tobacco settlement money into the BSF every year. It's part of the Detroit bankruptcy settlement. The governor is proposing to stop those payments and uses that money in other places in the budget. The other things not as exciting, but those two things have actual budget implications if they are or aren't adopted. So you might want to know what the BSF looks like. This is the state's rainy day fund. We're at about 2.1 billion right now. The governor is recommending 100 million deposit over the next 2 years, or this year plus next year. And if that were to go into effect plus interest, we would estimate the balance to be about 2.3 billion. All right. So I ran through those last ones fairly quickly, but happy to answer any questions as well. I think there were a couple that came up in the chat, but I can't see because of this weird, however it's showing up on my screen. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thanks very much, Kathryn. That was great information. Also, Robin, thank you very much. Not seeing any questions in the chat, but if we do have time for questions, if folks have one, please go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand, and I'll unmute you or put it in the chat. Kathryn, if that was a great slide deck, could you forward that to me so I can put that post that on our website along with Robin's, and as we get the recording done as well. So I'm not seeing any questions. So I appreciate those who have been with us here this morning. We've had a really good crowd and some really, really great information from both the Service Bureau and the fiscal agencies that will hopefully be of help to all of you moving forward, not just over the next few months, but over the course of the legislative session. And once again, I just want to reiterate something that has been said about both the Service Bureau and the fiscal agencies. They're available to all legislators, and your offices as well. If you have any questions, both are more than willing to meet with you, talk to you. The fiscal agencies, as Robin noted, have an organizational chart, so you can go to their websites and see which fiscal analyst covers which budget if you wanted to email one of those folks directly. And just can't say enough about the work that these three agencies, Service Bureau and the fiscal agencies do on behalf of you and your legislator. So barring any questions, I will say thank you to all our presenters. Thank you for joining us. And do look on our website for any posts that we'll have regarding this session, including the video and slide decks. So thanks again to everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your day and a great week.
Thank you.
Thanks.